The supermarket night shift tapes. The first tape arrived at the district office in a manila envelope with no return address. Inside, someone had written 3 words on a torn piece of receipt paper: "Please watch this." The timestamp on the VHS cassette read June 14, 2019, and the label had been scratched off with something sharp, leaving only the ghostly impression of what once said Harris Foods number 127 aisle 6. Detective Maria Santos would later describe the contents of that tape to investigators from the State Bureau, though she admitted her account could not fully capture what she had witnessed. The footage showed a perfectly ordinary grocery store aisle at 3:47 a.m. Cereal boxes lined the shelves in neat rows. Fluorescent lights hummed with that particular frequency that exists only in places never meant for prolonged human presence. For 6 minutes and 32 seconds nothing happened. Then, slowly, a box of corn flakes on the middle shelf began to rotate. Not fall, not slide, rotate, as if an invisible hand had gripped it and turned it exactly 45 degrees. 2 seconds later the box beside it did the same. Then the next, and the next. By the time the footage ended at 3:54 a.m., every single box on both sides of the aisle had turned to face the exact center of the corridor, their cheerful mascots all staring at a single point in empty space. The Harris Foods location at 4451 Pemberton Road had been operating as a 24-hour supermarket since 1987. It sat at the edge of a dying shopping plaza in Millbrook, Ohio, surrounded by vacant storefronts and a parking lot that seemed far too large for the customers it served. The previous owner, Gerald Harris, had died in 2003, and the chain had passed through 3 different corporate hands before landing with Midwest Grocery Holdings, a company based in Indianapolis that managed 17 similar locations across the Rust Belt. According to employment records, the store maintained a skeleton crew during overnight hours, typically 1 cashier, 1 stock associate, and a shift manager who spent most of their time in the back office watching security monitors and completing paperwork. The night shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and those who worked it developed a particular kind of camaraderie, the bond of people who exist in the margins of the waking world. Marcus Webb had been the night stock associate for 3 years when the incidents began. His employee file noted that he was reliable, quiet, and had never missed a shift. His written statement, taken by police on June 28, began with a simple declaration: "I thought I was losing my mind. Now I know something worse was happening." The first anomaly Marcus noticed had nothing to do with the cameras. It was May 3, and he was restocking canned goods in aisle 9 when he realized the aisle had grown longer. Not metaphorically longer, not optically longer, physically, measurably longer. He had walked the same path 3,000 times over his employment. 47 steps from the end cap display to the emergency exit. That night, he counted 63 steps and still had not reached the door. He mentioned it to no one at first. Night shifts do strange things to perception, he reasoned. The fluorescent lights, the silence, the way time seems to stretch and compress in an empty building, these factors could explain a simple miscount. But 3 nights later it happened again. 68 steps. And when he turned around to walk back, the aisle behind him appeared normal, exactly as long as it should be. The shift manager during this period was Carol Vance, a 53-year-old woman who had worked for the store in various capacities for over 2 decades. Her office notes from May 7 read as follows: Marcus reported feeling disoriented during shift. Suggested he take his break early. Reviewed camera footage from aisle 9 after he mentioned the hallway seemed wrong. Nothing unusual visible. Will monitor situation. Carol's notes would become crucial evidence in the investigation that followed. They painted a picture of escalating strangeness that she documented with the meticulous attention of someone who had spent her career filling out incident reports. May 9. Found all shopping carts in the vestibule arranged in a perfect spiral pattern at 4:15 a.m. Night cashier T. Rodriguez denies moving them. Carts were in standard rows when I checked at 2 a.m. No customer activity logged between those times. May 12. Motion sensor triggered in frozen food section at 3:33 a.m. Camera shows empty aisle. Checked in person, no one present. Noticed all freezer doors on the left side had been opened exactly 2 inches. May 14. Multiple items in dairy section expired overnight. Checked dates this morning. All products showed expiration dates months in the future when I stocked them yesterday. Corporate notified. Vendor denies shipping error. The camera system at Harris Foods number 127 consisted of 16 fixed units positioned throughout the store, feeding into a digital video recorder in the manager's office. The system was outdated by 2019 standards. It recorded at 12 frames per second and stored footage on hard drives that were supposed to be backed up weekly but rarely were. This technical limitation would become significant later, as investigators attempted to reconstruct what the cameras had captured. The footage from May 17 marked the first recorded appearance of what police reports would later describe as the unidentified figure. Camera 7, positioned above the pharmacy section, captured the image at 2:58 a.m. For exactly 4 frames, 1/3 of a second, something was visible at the far end of the aisle. The image quality made identification impossible, but the shape was wrong. Too tall, too thin, with proportions that the human eye struggled to process. Detective Santos reviewed this footage 47 times during her investigation. In her notes, she wrote, "Figure appears to be approximately 7 feet in height. Limbs appear elongated beyond normal human range of motion. Cannot determine if figure is standing or crouching. Position seems to change between frames despite only 1/12 second intervals. No face visible. Coloring appears pale or white." The cashier on duty that night was Teresa Rodriguez, a part-time employee who was working nights to supplement her income while attending nursing school. Her written statement described an experience that would recur with disturbing frequency in the weeks that followed. "I was at register 3 doing my closing counts when I heard someone say my name. It came from somewhere in the store, maybe aisle 4 or 5. It sounded like Marcus, so I called back and asked what he needed. The voice said my name again. Just, Teresa. Nothing else. I waited and then it said my name a 3rd time, but something was wrong with it. The word was broken up, like someone had recorded Marcus saying my name and then cut it into pieces and rearranged them. The sound was separate from the recess sound. There was a gap between them that shouldn't have been there. I found Marcus in the stockroom. He had been there for the past 20 minutes and had not called my name. He had not spoken at all." Carol Vance's notes from May 18. T. Rodriguez reported auditory disturbance during shift. Webb confirms he was not in the main store area at the time. Reviewed camera audio, recorders do not capture sound. Will request corporate upgrade to system. Employee morale appears affected. Considering reporting to district manager, but unsure how to document, employee heard voice that was not there. The pattern established itself quickly. Every 3 to 4 nights, something would appear on the cameras that could not be explained. Products would move. Aisles would distort. And always, at the edge of frame or in the blur of motion, there was the suggestion of something present that should not have been there. Marcus Webb's statement continued, "I started bringing a tape measure to work. I know how crazy that sounds, but I needed to prove to myself that I was not imagining things. The first few times I measured aisle 9, it was exactly right, 47 feet from end to end. Then on May 22nd, I measured it at the start of my shift, and it was 47 feet. Normal. I measured it again at 3 a.m. and it was 61 feet. I measured it 5 times because I could not accept what the tape was telling me. 61 feet. 14 feet longer than it should be. The worst part was that when I looked at the aisle, it did not look longer. It looked exactly the same as always. The proportions were right, the shelves were the same distance apart, the exit door was where it had always been. But the tape measure said 61 feet, and when I walked the length of it, it took me longer than it should have. Time and space were both wrong, and they were wrong in the same direction." The first employee to quit was a 17-year-old bag boy named Devin Price, who had been hired in April and worked exactly 6 shifts before submitting his resignation. His exit interview notes, recorded by assistant manager Linda Foster, were brief. Employee stated he couldn't handle the atmosphere, and that the job was not what he expected. When asked to elaborate, employee declined and left the premises. Devin would later speak to a local journalist investigating the Harris Foods incidents. His account added details that had not appeared in any official documentation. "They didn't tell me about the night shifts when they hired me. I was supposed to work evenings, but they kept asking me to stay late because they couldn't keep staff. The 3rd time I stayed past midnight, I saw something in the produce section. I was gathering the carts from the parking lot and I looked through the front windows, and there was something standing near the bananas. It was tall and white and it wasn't moving. I thought it was a mannequin at first, like maybe they were setting up a display. But we don't sell clothes. We don't have mannequins. I watched it for maybe 30 seconds trying to figure out what I was looking at. Then it moved. Not like a person moves, it sort of folded itself like it was made of paper and someone was creasing it. The next thing I knew, it was 10 feet closer to the window, but I hadn't seen it cross the distance. It just skipped like a video glitch. I left the carts in the parking lot and drove home. I didn't go back inside. When they called me for my next shift, I said I was done. The physical description Devon provided matched the figure captured on camera 7. Subsequent footage would reveal more details, though the term reveal perhaps overstates the clarity of what the cameras recorded. The figure seemed to exist in opposition to the recording equipment, as if it were made of something the cameras could only partially perceive. Detective Santos compiled a timeline of all recorded appearances between May 17 and June 25. The figure appeared on camera 14 times during this period, never for more than half a second, never fully in frame. Its movements defied the logic of a three-dimensional space. In one instance, it appeared in aisle 3 at 2:44 and 7 seconds a.m. and then again in the stockroom at 2:44 and 9 seconds a.m., 2 seconds and 140 feet away, with no camera capturing its passage between points. Carol Vance began keeping 2 sets of notes. The official ones went into the store's incident log system, where they could be reviewed by corporate. The unofficial ones she kept in a spiral notebook that she stored in her car. Her unofficial notes from May 25 read, "Something is very wrong here and I don't know who to tell." Marcus showed me his tape measure recordings. He's been documenting aisle lengths every hour of his shift for the past week. The numbers don't make sense. Aisles grow during certain hours and shrink back to normal before opening. The changes seem to center on aisle 6, which is the first one to expand and the last to contract. I walked aisle 6 tonight and felt it. The distance stretched while I was moving through it. My steps kept landing but I wasn't getting any closer to the end. I turned around and ran. I called the district office today. They said they would make a note of my concerns. The district manager assigned to investigate was a man named Paul Hendricks. His visit to store number 127 occurred on May 28, during regular business hours. His report, filed June 1, dismissed the employee complaints as a combination of stress, suggestion and possible ventilation issues causing mild disorientation. He recommended that the store's HVAC system be inspected and that Carol Vance take a week of paid leave to recover from accumulated workplace fatigue. Carol did not take the leave. Her notes from May 30, Paul Hendricks does not believe us because he came during the day. Whatever is happening here, it happens at night. It happens when the store is empty or nearly empty. It happens in the hours when no one else is watching. I think it knows when we are alone. The first incident involving a customer occurred on June 2. Security footage from 1:17 a.m. showed a woman in her 60s entering the store and walking directly to aisle 6. She appeared disoriented, though she had driven herself to the store. The camera tracked her progress as she moved down the aisle, and for 12 seconds she stopped. She turned her head sharply to the left, then to the right, then looked directly up at the ceiling. Her mouth opened. She appeared to be screaming, though the cameras recorded no sound. Teresa Rodriguez was the only employee on the floor at the time. Her statement: "I heard her yelling and I ran to aisle 6. When I got there, she was standing in the middle of the aisle with her hands over her ears. She was saying, 'Stop saying my name,' over and over. I asked her what was wrong and she looked at me like she didn't know who I was. She said someone was calling her from both ends of the aisle at the same time, using her voice to say her own name. I walked her to the front of the store and called an ambulance. She had a heart attack in the parking lot. They said she survived but I never saw her again. She never came back to the store." The customer's name was Dolores McCarthy. Hospital records indicated she was treated for a minor cardiac event and released after 2 days of observation. When police attempted to contact her as part of the investigation, they discovered she had moved to a different state without leaving a forwarding address. Her family declined to provide contact information or discuss the incident. Marcus Webb's documentation grew more detailed as June progressed. He had begun photographing the aisles with his phone, timestamping each image and measuring the visible distances against known reference points. His notes from June 8: "Aisle 6 is the center. Whatever is happening, aisle 6 is where it starts. I measured all 16 aisles tonight. All of them were normal except 6, which measured 73 feet at 3 a.m. That's 26 feet longer than it should be. I took a picture of the aisle and in the picture it looks normal. 47 feet. The camera sees what should be there, not what is there. I tried to walk to the end of aisle 6 at 3:15 a.m. I gave up after 5 minutes. I was walking at a normal pace and the exit door never got any closer. I turned around and walked back and I reached the front of the aisle in about 40 seconds. The distance is different depending on which direction you're walking." Carol Vance's unofficial notes from June 10: "I saw it tonight. The thing in the cameras. It was standing at the end of aisle 6 when I did my 3 a.m. walkthrough. I stopped at the aisle entrance and it was there at the far end near the emergency exit. It was tall and thin and white like something that had never seen the sun. Its arms were too long. They hung past its knees. I could not see its face because it did not appear to have one. I did not move. I stood there for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. It did not move either. Then I heard my name. My voice saying my name, coming from where the thing was standing. Carol. Just my name, but pronounced wrong, like the syllables had been taken apart and put back together by someone who did not understand what names were for. I turned off my flashlight and walked backward until I reached the front of the store. When I looked at the camera feed from aisle 6, there was nothing there. The aisle was empty. It only exists when you are looking at it directly. The corporate response to the escalating incidents was characterized by what investigators would later call institutional blindness. Emails obtained through subpoena revealed that multiple employees had reported concerns through official channels, all of which had been routed to the same regional HR representative, who categorized them under general workplace anxiety, and recommended that the store host a team-building event. On June 12, Marcus Webb submitted a written request to transfer to a different location. His request was denied due to staffing needs at store number 127. That same day, Teresa Rodriguez reduced her hours to the minimum required to maintain her employment. Carol Vance began working double shifts, unable to leave the store in the care of employees she felt were not prepared for what might happen. The footage from June 14, the same footage that would eventually arrive at the district office in an unmarked envelope, was captured by camera 9 at 3:47 a.m. It showed aisle 6, the cereal aisle, in its entirety. For 6 minutes and 32 seconds, the boxes turned one by one, rotating to face the center of the corridor. But the footage that was sent to the district office had been edited. The full recording, recovered later from the store's damaged hard drive, contained an additional 4 minutes and 18 seconds. In that extended footage, something emerged from between the shelves. The full recording from June 14 remained classified as evidence for the duration of the investigation. Detective Santos was one of only 7 people authorized to view it, and her notes on the content were deliberately sparse, as if putting too many details in writing would make them more real. At 3:53 a.m., after all cereal boxes have completed their rotation, camera captures movement between shelving units on the left side of the aisle. Movement is inconsistent with any known animal or mechanical source. Subject emerges partially from between boxes on the third shelf from the bottom. Subject appears to be crawling. Subject's limbs do not articulate in normal fashion. Subject's skin appears to be white or gray. Subject has no discernible face. Subject moves across the aisle floor toward the center point where all boxes are now facing. Subject stops at the center. Subject remains motionless for 94 seconds. Subject appears to be listening. At 3:56 a.m., subject retreats between shelving units on the right side of the aisle. Recording continues for additional 2 minutes with no further activity. Marcus Webb did not see this footage until months later, but he felt its aftermath during his shift on June 15. The store was different that night. I can't explain it any other way. From the moment I walked in, I knew something had changed. The air felt thicker. Sounds didn't carry the way they should. I dropped a can of tomatoes and the noise it made seemed to stop halfway to my ears, like the store was absorbing it. I avoided aisle 6. I had been avoiding it for weeks, but that night I couldn't even look at it. Every time I passed the entrance, I felt something looking back. Not watching, looking. There's a difference. Watching is passive. Looking is active. Whatever was in aisle 6 was looking for something. At around 2 a.m., I was in the stockroom organizing a delivery. The radio we kept back there started making noise. Not playing music, the station was always set to some classic rock channel, but making noise. Static, mostly, but underneath the static I could hear something trying to form words. Not words exactly. Parts of words. Syllables. My name broken into pieces. March. March. The same pattern over and over like it was practicing. I unplugged the radio. The sound continued for another 15 seconds after there was no power going to the unit. Carol Vance's unofficial notes from June 15. Marcus heard it tonight. Whatever speaks with our voices, it's getting closer. I reviewed the camera footage from his stockroom experience. The recording shows Marcus standing perfectly still for approximately 2 minutes, staring at a radio that is clearly unplugged. There is no audio on our system, so I cannot confirm what he heard. But I believe him. I believe him because I have heard it too. I am going to start making copies of the footage. Someone needs to know what is happening here. The copies Carol made were stored in 3 locations: a USB drive in her car, a DVD mailed to her sister in Michigan, and a VHS tape created using an old recorder she brought from home. This last copy was the one that eventually arrived at the district office, sent by someone whose identity has never been confirmed. On June 18, the first structural anomaly was documented by someone other than Marcus Webb. A health inspector named Alan Griffith arrived for a routine evaluation at 7 a.m. His report contained a notation that was flagged by investigators months later. Observed unusual measurements in storage area. Dimensions on file indicate storage room should be approximately 800 square feet. Measured dimensions suggest actual area closer to 1,100 square feet. Possible error in original documentation. Recommended resurvey before next inspection. Alan Griffith was contacted by Detective Santos in September. His response was brief: "I remember that inspection. The store felt wrong. I don't know how else to put it. The storage room was too big. I measured it 3 times because I thought my tape measure was broken. And the whole time I was back there, I kept thinking someone was standing just behind the shelving units just out of sight. I finished my inspection as fast as I could and I made sure to schedule the next one for a different inspector. I didn't want to go back." The events of June 22 marked a turning point in the documented incidents. This was the night that Carol Vance first attempted to confront what she had been observing. Her unofficial notes from that night were written in handwriting that grew increasingly erratic across the page. "I decided to go to aisle 6 at 3 a.m. I brought a flashlight, a camera, and a voice recorder. If this thing exists, I want proof that I am not imagining it. I entered the aisle from the front. The moment I stepped past the end cap display, I felt the distance change. The exit door at the far end was visible, but it was farther away than it should have been. I started walking. I counted my steps. After 100 steps, I stopped and looked behind me. The entrance to the aisle was still visible, approximately 50 feet away. I looked ahead. The exit door appeared to be approximately 50 feet away. I was in the middle of an aisle that should not have been able to contain me at the point where I was standing. I kept walking. 200 steps. 300. The shelves beside me never changed. The same products repeated over and over. Cereal, granola bars, oatmeal, cereal, granola bars, oatmeal. An endless loop of breakfast foods extending into a distance that had no end. At step number 347, I heard my name. It came from directly behind me, so close that I felt breath on my neck. My voice saying my name. "Carol." I turned around. There was nothing there. But the entrance to the aisle was now visible again, approximately 40 feet away. And the exit door behind me was approximately 10 feet away. The aisle had compressed while I was turned around. I walked to the exit door and left the store through the back entrance. I sat in my car for an hour before I felt safe enough to go back inside. Marcus Webb's shift that night overlapped with Carol's experience. His account provided a different perspective on the same events. Carol told me she was going to walk aisle 6 at 3 a.m. I tried to talk her out of it, but she was determined. She said she needed to understand what was happening. She had been in that store longer than anyone, and she felt responsible for it somehow, like whatever was wrong was something she should have noticed sooner. I watched her on the security monitors. She entered aisle 6 at 3:02 a.m. For the first few minutes, everything looked normal. I could see her walking slowly down the aisle, her flashlight beam visible. Then something happened to the footage. The camera didn't glitch exactly, but the image started to stretch. Carol appeared to be walking in place, her legs moving but her position static. The aisle behind her seemed to extend, the shelves pulling apart like taffy. I watched her for what the timestamp said was 4 minutes. In that time she did not appear to move more than 10 feet on the camera. But when she finally emerged from the back of the store, she told me she had been walking for over 30 minutes. The cameras see something different than what's actually there. They see the store as it should be, not as it is. Whatever is changing the space, it exists in a place the cameras can't fully record. On June 24, the night cashier position became impossible to fill. 3 different employees called in sick, 1 resigned without notice, and a temp worker from an agency arrived at 10 p.m., worked for 45 minutes, and then left without explanation. Teresa Rodriguez, despite her reduced hours, agreed to cover the shift as a favor to Carol. Her statement about that night filled 11 pages of typed transcript. I was alone at the registers for most of the shift. Carol was in the back doing inventory and Marcus was restocking somewhere in the store. We had no customers after midnight, which was normal for a Tuesday. The store was silent except for the hum of the refrigeration units. At about 2:30 a.m., I heard the automatic doors at the front entrance open. I looked up expecting to see a customer, but no one was there. The doors had opened on their own, which happened sometimes when the sensors malfunctioned. But then they closed and I heard footsteps. Not on the tile near the entrance. The footsteps were coming from inside the store, from somewhere in the aisles. They were wrong. Too slow, too deliberate, and they had an extra beat to them, like whatever was making them had more than 2 feet. I called out, "Hello?" and my voice echoed. It never echoed in the store before. The space was too full of product to echo. But that night, my voice bounced back to me 3 times before it faded. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard my name. My voice saying Teresa, but stretched out. The syllables were in the wrong order. Riaseda. It said it again, closer this time. Beseri. It was learning. It was figuring out how to say my name correctly. I ran to the back of the store and found Carol in the stockroom. I told her what happened. She didn't seem surprised. She just nodded and said, "It's getting better at voices. Soon it won't make mistakes anymore." The final week of documented incidents began on June 25 and concluded with the store's closure on July 1. During this period, the entity, as it would be called in official reports, appeared on camera 17 times, more than in the entire preceding month combined. Its appearances were longer, clearer, and increasingly difficult to dismiss as technical artifacts. Detective Santos compiled a summary of the footage from this period. Camera footage from June 25 through June 30 shows progressive deterioration of both the recording equipment and the physical space of the store. Timestamps become unreliable after June 26, with multiple instances of apparent time loops and discontinuities. The entity appears on all 16 cameras at various points, suggesting increased mobility or the presence of multiple entities. Physical characteristics remain consistent. Height estimated at 7 feet, elongated limbs, pale coloring, no visible face. Movement patterns are inconsistent with bipedal locomotion. Entity appears to traverse space in ways that do not correspond to normal physical motion. Marcus Webb's notes from June 26. I measured aisle 6 tonight and the tape measure broke. Not because the distance was too long, the tape is 50 feet, but because the number stopped making sense. I would measure a section and get 47 feet. I would measure the same section immediately afterward and get 32 feet. Then 58 feet. Then 12 feet. The aisle is not staying the same size from moment to moment. It's fluctuating like breathing. I told Carol I was going to quit. She asked me to stay until the end of the week. She said she had a plan. She was going to document everything and send it to someone who would believe her. I agreed to stay, but I made her promise that we would leave together on July 1 no matter what. She agreed. Carol Vance's unofficial notes from June 27. It spoke to me tonight. Not just my name, full sentences. My voice saying things I had never said. It was waiting at the end of aisle 6 when I did my walkthrough, and when I stopped, it started talking. Carol. Carol, stay. Carol, stay here. Carol is home. Carol is home now. The words were clearer than before, but still not quite right. The rhythm was off, like someone reading a script they didn't understand. I asked it what it wanted. I don't know why I thought it would answer. It said, Carol wants home. Home is here. Here is home. Carol stays. I backed away slowly. It didn't follow. But as I was leaving the aisle, I heard it say one more thing in a voice that wasn't mine. It was Marcus's voice, perfect and clear. Carol, can you help me with something in the stockroom? I found Marcus at the front of the store, loading shopping carts into the vestibule. He had not called for me. He had not spoken at all. The thing in aisle 6 has learned to copy more than just names. The police were first contacted on June 28, not by store employees but by a customer who had witnessed something in the parking lot. The incident report filed by responding officers documented the following. Caller reported seeing a tall white figure emerge from the rear of the Harris Foods location at approximately 4:45 a.m. Figure appeared to move in an unnatural manner and retreated back into the building when the caller's vehicle headlights illuminated it. Officers arrived on scene at 5:12 a.m. and conducted a walkthrough of the premises with the assistance of store manager Carol Vance. No evidence of intruders or unauthorized persons was discovered. Officers noted that the store felt unusual but could not provide specific details. Case closed pending further incidents. The first officer on scene, James Patterson, would later provide additional details during the official investigation. I've been a cop for 16 years. I've seen crime scenes, accidents, things that would make most people sick. But that store was different. It wasn't scary in the way a dark alley is scary. It was scary because it felt wrong. The proportions seemed off, like someone had taken a normal grocery store and stretched it slightly in all directions. The fluorescent lights made everything look flat and dead. And there was a smell, not rotten exactly but stale, like air that had been trapped somewhere for a long time. When we walked through aisle 6, I felt dizzy. My partner said the same thing. We got to the end of the aisle and looked back, and for just a second the entrance seemed miles away. Then I blinked and it was normal again. I wrote it off as fatigue. I wish I had listened to my instincts and shut that store down right there. The penultimate night of Harris Foods No. 127's operation was June 30th. 3 employees were scheduled to work: Carol Vance, Marcus Webb, and a new hire named Jennifer Okonkwo, who had transferred from another location to cover the cashier position. Jennifer had not been informed of the incidents at the store. Her first and only night shift would later become the subject of extensive documentation. Jennifer Okonkwo's statement: "I transferred to the Pemberton Road location because they offered me $1 more per hour. Nobody told me anything about problems at the store. My first night was supposed to be training with Carol, the shift manager, but she seemed distracted the whole time. She kept looking at the aisles like she expected something to jump out. Around 1 a.m., I was reorganizing the impulse items near my register when I saw movement at the end of aisle 2. I thought it was Marcus, the stock guy, so I called out to him. A voice answered, but it wasn't saying words. It was saying my name, Jennifer, but the voice was wrong. It sounded like me. Like someone had recorded me saying my name and was playing it back, but they had slowed it down or sped it up in places. I walked toward aisle 2 to see what was happening. The aisle was empty, but the voice kept saying my name, moving away from me, leading me deeper into the store. I followed it to aisle 6. The moment I stepped into aisle 6, everything changed. The aisle was too long. I could see the exit door at the far end, but it looked tiny, like I was looking at it through the wrong end of a telescope. The shelves on either side of me seemed to curve inward, leaning over me like they were about to fall. And at the far end of the aisle, standing in front of the exit door, was something that was not human. It was white, tall. Its arms hung down to the floor. It didn't have a face, just smooth, pale skin where a face should be. But it knew I was there. I felt it looking at me with something that wasn't eyes. I ran. I ran back through the store and out the front entrance, and I did not stop until I was in my car. I drove home and I called in sick for my next shift, and I never went back. When the police contacted me, I told them everything. I don't care if people think I'm crazy. I know what I saw. Carol Vance's final unofficial note was written sometime on the night of June 30th. The entry was undated and appeared to have been written in haste. It's in the store with us right now. All of us have seen it. Jennifer ran out around 1:30, and I don't blame her. Marcus and I are going to finish the shift because we have to. Leaving would mean admitting that something here is stronger than we are. I've been thinking about what it said to me. Home is here. I don't think it's trying to hurt us. I think it's trying to communicate. I think it's been here for a long time, maybe longer than the store, and when we built this place on its home, it didn't know how to react. It learned our language by listening to us. It learned our names by hearing us say them. It copies us because copying is the only way it knows how to talk. But it's getting better. And when it gets good enough to have a real conversation, I don't know what it's going to say. The events of July 1st were never fully documented. Security footage from that night was partially corrupted, with large sections of recording missing or degraded beyond analysis. What remained showed the following. At 11:47 p.m., Carol Vance and Marcus Webb were visible at the front of the store, apparently in conversation. At 12:15 a.m., Marcus began his restocking route while Carol returned to the manager's office. At 1:33 a.m., camera 6, positioned above aisle 6, recorded the entity standing motionless at the center of the aisle for 17 minutes. At 1:50 a.m., the entity turned its featureless head toward the camera. At 1:51 a.m., all 16 cameras simultaneously lost signal for approximately 4 minutes. When the feed resumed at 1:55 a.m., the entity was gone and the store appeared normal. At 2:30 a.m., Marcus Webb was recorded entering the manager's office and finding it empty. Carol Vance was not visible on any camera after 1:55 a.m. The search for Carol Vance continued for 6 weeks. Police dogs tracked her scent to aisle 6, where the trail ended abruptly at the center of the corridor, the same point where the entity had been standing in the last clear footage before the signal loss. Her car remained in the parking lot. Her personal belongings were found in the manager's office. Her unofficial notebook was discovered under the seat of her vehicle, containing the documentation that would later become central to the investigation. Marcus Webb was the last person to see Carol alive. His statement was taken multiple times over the following months, and he never wavered from his account. We agreed to meet at the front of the store at 2 a.m. We were going to do a final walkthrough together and then lock up and leave. I was running behind because I had to finish restocking the frozen section. When I got to the manager's office, Carol wasn't there. Her coffee was still on the desk, still warm. Her keys were on the hook by the door. I checked the security monitors, but the screens were showing static on most channels. I called her name. From somewhere deep in the store, I heard her answer. Her voice sang, "Marcus, I'm in aisle 6. Can you come help me with something?" I almost went. The voice was perfect. It sounded exactly like Carol. But then I remembered what she had told me about the thing copying Marcus's voice to lure her. I remembered what it had said, "Home is here." I walked to the front of the store. I called the police from the parking lot. I did not go to aisle 6. I will never go to aisle 6. Whatever took Carol is still there, and it knows how to sound like her now. The store was officially closed on July 3rd following a brief investigation that concluded with an unsatisfying non-determination. Carol Vance was classified as a missing person. No charges were filed. The security footage was impounded but never released to the public. The building itself was sealed, and a chain-link fence was erected around the perimeter with signs warning of structural instability. Detective Maria Santos requested a follow-up investigation in September, after she had reviewed all available footage and documentation. Her request was denied. In her personal notes, she wrote, "I am being told that there is insufficient evidence to pursue this case further. I am being told that a 60-year-old woman disappeared from a locked building in the middle of the night, leaving no trace except for her scent, which ended in the middle of an aisle that has no exits, and that this is not worth investigating. I have watched the footage. I have seen the entity. I have read Carol Vance's notes. She documented something that defies explanation, and she did it with the precision of someone who knew she might not survive long enough to explain it herself. She deserved better than to be forgotten. I'm keeping copies of everything. If anyone ever reopens this case, I want them to have the complete picture." The Harris Foods location at 4451 Pemberton Road remained vacant for 3 years. In 2022, a development company purchased the property with plans to demolish the building and construct apartment units. Demolition was scheduled for October of that year. The construction crew arrived on October 14th. Their foreman, a man named David Reyes, documented what they found in a report filed with his company and subsequently obtained by journalists. We started demo work at 7 a.m. The building had been empty for years and was in rough shape. Water damage, mold, the usual stuff you see in abandoned retail spaces. We got through most of the structure without problems, but when we reached the section that used to be the store's interior, what the plans called the sales floor, we had to stop. The dimensions were wrong. According to our blueprints, that section of the building should have been approximately 15,000 square feet. When we measured it for demo purposes, we got 23,000 square feet. We measured it 3 times. The building was larger on the inside than it should have been. We also found something in what used to be aisle 6. The floor in that section had been torn up by time and weather, and underneath the tile there was a cavity. Not a basement. The building wasn't supposed to have a basement, just an open space extending down into the ground. We dropped a measuring tape into the cavity and ran out of tape at 50 feet without hitting bottom. We notified the property owner and they brought in engineers. The engineers couldn't explain the cavity. They said it looked excavated, like something had dug it out from below. They also said the soil composition at the bottom of the cavity, as far as they could measure, didn't match anything in the regional geological surveys. It was too old. It predated the last ice age. The demolition was halted. The property was sold again. As far as I know, it's still sitting there, fenced off and empty. I don't know what's under that building and I don't want to know. The final piece of documentation in the Harris Foods case file was a transcript of a voicemail left on Detective Santos's office phone on November 3, 2022. The caller's number was traced to a payphone in Millbrook, Ohio, approximately 2 miles from the former store location. The payphone had been decommissioned in 2018. Transcript of voicemail, Detective Santos. "This is Carol. Carol Vance. I need you to listen. I'm still here. I never left. The store is gone but the place is still here. The place was always here. It was here before the store and it will be here after. I understand now. It was not trying to hurt us. It was trying to find a way to talk. It learned our words because it wanted to tell us something. I know what it wanted to say. Home is here. We built on its home. We filled its home with our lights and our noise and our little boxes of cereal. It did not know how to ask us to leave. It did not have words. So it learned words. It learned our names. It learned to say, 'Carol, stay,' because staying was what it understood. I'm going to help it now. I'm going to teach it more words. When it can speak clearly, it will tell everyone. It will tell everyone that some places do not belong to us. Some places are doors. Some places are mouths. Some places are home for things we were never meant to see. Do not come looking for me. The door is closed. But if you ever hear your name in your own voice coming from somewhere it should not be, do not answer. Walk away. Forget you heard it. It learns through repetition. It learns through practice. It is getting very good at sounding like us. Goodbye, detective. Thank you for believing. The voicemail was analyzed by forensic audio experts. The voice was confirmed to match samples of Carol Vance's speech obtained from training videos and prior phone communications. The recording showed no signs of manipulation or splicing. Carol Vance's voice, 4 years after her disappearance, had left a message on a disconnected payphone to warn a detective she had never met. The case remains officially open. The property at 4451 Pemberton Road remains vacant. The cavity beneath aisle 6 has never been explored. Some nights, according to local residents, the lights in the old store flicker on. There is no electricity connected to the building. There are no functional light fixtures remaining after the partial demolition. But the lights flicker on anyway, one by one, moving through the space where the aisles used to be. And sometimes, if you stand in the parking lot at 3 a.m. and listen very carefully, you can hear a voice. A woman's voice, familiar and wrong, practicing names. Learning. Getting better. Speaking from a place that was never a store, that was never a building, that was always something else wearing the shape of a place humans built. Waiting. Learning how to say what it has always wanted to say.